All right, so today we're going deep on Chinese entrepreneurs, and I'm super excited for this one. We're going to go way beyond the typical stuff you hear in the news. We're really going to uncover like the strategies and innovations that are making them so successful. And for this deep dive, we're using Edward C's book, China's Disruptors. Really fascinating book.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised by what they hear. Because, most people think, oh, China, cheap knockoffs, cutthroat competition, just focused on like quantity over quality.
Right.
But that's really outdated thinking. And what's so interesting about modern China is, this new breed of entrepreneur. These are people who are really laser focused on quality,
Right.
on innovation, and on expanding globally.
Okay, let's unpack this idea of quality for a second.
Sure.
Because for a long time, made in China wasn't exactly a mark of, high quality.
Right, yeah, for sure. That was kind of the old narrative. But things have changed a lot. And to understand this shift, you kind of have to go back to the 1980s. So picture this. Zhang Ruimin. This is the CEO of Hair. This company was struggling with some serious quality control issues. And he literally takes a sledgehammer and smashes 76 faulty refrigerators.
Right.
Right there on the factory floor in front of all his employees.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
That's a powerful statement.
Oh, it was huge. I mean, talk about sending shockwaves through the company and really the entire industry.
Yeah, no kidding. That's a story that'll stick with you. So clearly it worked. Hair went from, a struggling company to the world's top home appliance brand, by volume at least. That's pretty incredible.
It really is. It shows you how adaptable Chinese entrepreneurs are. They knew that to compete on a global level, they had to deliver on quality and build strong brands that people could trust.
So what drove this entrepreneurial boom in China? Was it just a matter of copying Western business models?
No, not at all. They definitely took inspiration from around the world. But they also forged their own path. There were 4 main factors, I think. First, the scale of the Chinese market is just unlike anything else in the world. You've got this rapidly growing middle class, and they're hungry for new products and services. It's like a massive incubator for entrepreneurial ideas.
Yeah, it's like having this built-in test market of hundreds of millions of consumers.
Exactly. Then you have the increasing openness of China's markets. The government still maintains tight political control, of course, but they've also implemented policies to liberalize the economy, allowing private enterprises to flourish. They've invested heavily in infrastructure and created a much more favorable business environment.
So it's not just about throwing open the doors. There's a strategic hand guiding things.
Yeah.
What about the role of technology? I can only imagine how much that has changed the business landscape in China.
Oh, it's been massive. The internet, especially e-commerce and mobile technology, those have been absolute game changers. They've allowed Chinese companies to leapfrog entire stages of development and connect with consumers in ways that were never possible before.
Speaking of e-commerce, let's talk about Jack Ma and Alibaba. I mean, that's a story that really captures the ambition and agility of Chinese entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. It's a classic example of seeing an opportunity and seizing it. I mean, Alibaba started as a B2B platform, connecting Chinese manufacturers with buyers all over the world. But Jack Ma saw the potential of e-commerce really early on, and he pivoted the company to dominate the Chinese consumer market with platforms like Taobao and Tmall.
Yeah, he was way ahead of the curve on that one. And he didn't stop there. Alipay was another brilliant move that really changed the game.
Oh, absolutely. He saw that there was a real need for a secure and convenient online payment system. And boom, Alipay was born. And now it's a global giant, handling more transactions than any other platform. It really shows you how Chinese companies leverage this ecosystem approach to gain a competitive advantage, which is something Western companies often struggle with.
It's amazing to think how Alibaba went from this simple online marketplace to this massive ecosystem that covers everything. E-commerce, finance, logistics, even cloud computing, they're everywhere.
Yeah, they really are. And it's not just about expansion for the sake of it. Alibaba's story highlights how competitive the landscape is, which is what gave rise to what we call the BAT companies, Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent. These 3 companies completely redefined China's digital landscape. And now they're challenging global giants.
Oh, yes, the BT. Can't talk about Chinese tech without mentioning those powerhouses.
Right. So you've got Baidu, which dominates search, much like Google in the West. We've already talked about Alibaba's dominance in e-commerce. And then there's Tencent. They started with a simple messaging platform called QQ, but their growth has been incredible.
Oh, I remember QQ. It was huge back in the day. But they didn't just stick with messaging, did they?
No, they did not. They completely dominated the online gaming world through virtual goods, and then they launched WeChat. This super app is like the Swiss Army knife of digital tools, messaging payments, social media, ride-hailing, you name it. It's become essential for like over 1 billion people in China.
WeChat is a whole other world. It's incredible how these companies have gone from being just Chinese powerhouses to expanding so aggressively overseas. They're competing head-to-head with Google and Facebook now. What's the secret to their constant innovation?
Well, part of it is just the incredible pressure cooker environment in China. The market is so vast and it moves so fast that businesses have to constantly innovate just to survive. It's innovate or become irrelevant.
So it's like a constant race to stay ahead of the curve.
Exactly. And there are some really great examples of this. Like take Xiaomi, for instance. They're a smartphone company. And they've completely disrupted the traditional model of product development. Instead of relying on these expensive R&D departments, they crowdsource ideas from their massive user base. They've built this passionate community that actually helps shape their products.
That's so smart. It's like having this giant focus group
Yeah.
of millions of tech-savvy users.
Exactly. It lets them respond to what customers want with incredible speed. And then you have companies like Yihaodian. They're an online supermarket. And they've tackled the problem of delivering groceries in China's megacities head-on.
Which is a huge challenge.
Oh, it's massive. I mean, these cities are so congested. But they built these intricate networks using fleets of motorcycles, zipping through traffic to deliver groceries right to people's doorsteps.
It's like something out of a futuristic movie.
Yeah.
All these delivery bikes swarming the city.
It might look chaotic, but it's actually really ingenious. They've turned a weakness into a strength. And these examples show that Chinese entrepreneurs aren't just copying, they're finding completely new ways to do things, to meet the challenges of the Chinese market.
It's not just about meeting needs, though. It's about shaping the future. And these innovations are having a ripple effect all over the world. So this brings us to a really important question. How should businesses and individuals outside of China respond to this new wave of competition and innovation?
Well, a lot of Western companies have been slow to react. They've clung to this outdated view of Chinese companies as just imitators focused on low costs. But we've seen that that's just not true anymore.
It's time to ditch those old stereotypes.
Absolutely. And it's not just about being politically correct. This misperception can be dangerous. It leads to complacency. And you fail to recognize the strengths of Chinese companies. Say argues that we need a fundamental shift in mindset. Instead of seeing China as just another market to exploit, companies need to see it as a source of learning and innovation.
So embrace the challenge and turn it into an opportunity.
Exactly. And one of his key recommendations is for companies to really localize their operations in China. And I don't just mean setting up shop. It means truly understanding the local market, the culture, and most importantly, the Chinese consumer.
Understanding those nuances is key.
Absolutely. It's also about developing local talent. Chinese companies are attracting top talent, and multinationals need to do the same if they want to compete.
Yeah. You need people on the ground who are immersed in the culture, who can adapt quickly and seize opportunities.
Exactly. Another important point is that companies should look for ways to take what they've learned in China and apply it globally. They can learn from the speed, agility, and efficiency of the Chinese market to become more competitive worldwide.
So it's not just about adapting to China, it's about learning from China and using those lessons to improve operations everywhere.
Exactly. It's a two-way street. Now, shifting gears a bit, how should individuals be thinking about the rise of Chinese entrepreneurs? It's easy to get caught up in the hype, or the fear, depending on your perspective. But Say says we need to move beyond these simplistic narratives, like China threat or China savior.
It's not about picking sides or seeing things in black and white. It's about understanding the complexities.
Right. There are both opportunities and challenges. The reality is that this is a multifaceted situation for everyone. On the one hand, Chinese companies are creating jobs, introducing new products, opening up new markets. They're pushing boundaries in areas like renewable energy, artificial intelligence, e-commerce, which could benefit the whole world.
So there's a potential upside for everyone if we approach it the right way.
But there are also legitimate concerns, like intellectual property theft, unfair competition, and the potential impact on jobs in other countries.
It's a balancing act for sure.
Exactly. The key is to engage with China thoughtfully and strategically. For individuals, this means staying informed, developing in-demand skills, and looking for opportunities to collaborate and learn from Chinese entrepreneurs.
So adapt, engage, and stay ahead of the curve.
Exactly. The rise of China's entrepreneurs is a game changer, and it's up to each of us to understand the rules of the game and find ways to play it effectively.
We've talked about businesses and individuals, but what about governments? How are they navigating this shifting global landscape?
Well, that's another crucial piece of the puzzle. The Chinese government has played a complex role in fostering entrepreneurship. It's a delicate balancing act between providing support and maintaining control.
It's that tension between wanting to promote innovation and economic growth, while also making sure they stay in control politically.
Exactly. And this tension is becoming more and more apparent. On one hand, the Chinese government has created policies to encourage private enterprise. They've streamlined regulations to make it easier to start businesses, and they've attracted foreign investment. They know that a strong private sector is essential for economic growth.
So they're creating a more fertile ground for entrepreneurship.
But at the same time, they've tightened their grip on the internet, they've cracked down on dissent, and they maintain a tight hold on key industries. It's a mixed bag. Lots of support for entrepreneurs, but also clear limits on freedom.
It sounds like there's a tug-of-war going on between economic liberalization and political control. So can China maintain its economic dynamism while also tightening its political grip?
That's a question C wrestles with in the book. And there are no easy answers. It's a dilemma with huge implications, not just for China, but for the whole world.
It's a good reminder that the rise of China's entrepreneurs isn't happening in a vacuum. It's connected to the political and social landscape.
Absolutely.
To fully grasp this phenomenon, we need to look beyond the purely economic factors.
We do. We need to consider the historical, cultural, and political context.
It's not just about business.
Yeah.
It's about understanding China as a whole,
Right.
its history, its culture, the forces that have shaped its path.
And that brings us to the final part of our deep dive. We've looked at how Chinese entrepreneurs are changing things. We've talked about the responses from businesses, individuals, and governments. Now we're going to delve into some of the deeper implications of all this.
So welcome back to our deep dive into China's disruptors. We've talked about the rise of Chinese entrepreneurs and how they're changing the business world. But I'm really curious about the long-term implications of all this.
Yeah, that's where C's analysis gets really fascinating. He argues that the impact of China's entrepreneurs goes way beyond economics. They're challenging our ideas about power, innovation, even global leadership.
Okay, that's a bold statement.
Yeah.
How are they challenging these traditional notions of power?
Well, for decades, we've been in a world dominated by Western institutions and multinational corporations. But Chinese entrepreneurs are shifting that balance. They're building companies that aren't just financially powerful, but also technologically sophisticated. And they have more and more influence on the global stage.
Yeah, they're not just playing catch-up anymore. They're setting the agenda in a lot of industries.
Right, and they're doing it in a way that's distinctly Chinese, drawing on their own cultural values, business practices, and a unique approach to technology.
So it's not just about economic power. It's also about cultural influence, shaping perceptions, offering a different model for success.
Exactly. It makes us rethink what it means to be a global leader in the 21st century. It's not a one-size-fits-all model anymore.
So let's talk about innovation. You mentioned that Chinese entrepreneurs are challenging traditional notions of innovation.
Yeah, so in the West, we often think of innovation as being driven by individual genius, those eureka moments. But in China, innovation is often more collective and iterative. It's about taking existing ideas, adapting them, and scaling them up quickly.
So less about inventing something totally new and more about perfecting it and making it available to everyone.
Exactly. It's a constant process of refinement and improvement, driven by data user feedback and a focus on efficiency.
And this approach has been incredibly effective.
Oh, absolutely. Chinese companies are leading the way in things like mobile payments, e-commerce, artificial intelligence, not necessarily because they invented these things, but because they've figured out how to implement them in a way that's efficient and user-friendly, often on a massive scale.
Right. It's about taking a good idea and making it even better,
Yeah.
and then making it accessible to billions of people.
Exactly. And this really challenges the traditional Western model of innovation, which is often more focused on things like intellectual property protection, exclusivity, high profit margins.
It's a more open and collaborative approach.
Yeah, it is. And it has the potential to be very disruptive.
Okay, so this brings us to global leadership. How is the rise of China's entrepreneurs changing the dynamics of global leadership?
Well, for a long time, the United States has been seen as the global economic leader. But China is challenging that. Chinese companies are investing heavily in infrastructure projects around the world, especially in developing countries. It's part of their Belt and Road Initiative, which aims to create this huge network of trade routes and economic partnerships.
That's a pretty ambitious plan.
It is. And they're not just building roads and bridges, they're also exporting their technology, their business models, even their cultural values.
There's a soft power play as well.
Exactly. And this is leading to a new kind of world, a multipolar world, where power is more spread out and different models of development are competing.
It's a more complex world, maybe more unpredictable, but maybe also more dynamic and innovative.
And it's a world where Chinese entrepreneurs are likely to play a big role.
This has been a fascinating conversation. Any final thoughts for our listeners?
The rise of China's entrepreneurs is really transformative, and we're still seeing how it will all play out. It's a story of ambition, innovation, and resilience. It challenges our assumptions and makes us rethink our place in the world. It's a story that's just beginning.
So keep an eye on China. The most exciting developments are yet to come. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.